Hi there, I'm Tom Spencer. This week on Central Texas Gardener, Cherie Colburn gets the kids on board with some blooming tales of Texas wildflowers. On tour, meet a gardener who exchanged snowdrifts for drought. Daphne answers your top viewer questions and makes her pick of the week. And John Dromgoole's got tips for your compost pile. So let's get growing right here, right now.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.
When gardeners relocate to Texas, many feel like they've landed on another planet. See how this Minnesota transplant quickly adapted her skills to plants she'd never known.
Kathleen Lorsbach picked up a new botanical vocabulary when she and husband Tom moved to Texas in 2007. Agaves were a first for her, since her gardening knowledge was rooted in Minnesota.
Both my grandmothers were avid gardeners, and as a little girl I was always helping them in the garden, and I just had such great memories of that. And then when I got my first house, I just started with gardening my own things with transplants and pieces from their gardens, and it just became a real hobby that I spent a lot of time on.
When she landed in Texas, Kathleen adapted her skills with enthusiasm for plants she'd never grown.
But I fell in love with the succulents, the agave and the cactus and all those things, and the rock formations. So when we built this house, there was just nothing here. You know, it was just a builder's lot with a few plants in the front. And so I took that opportunity to kind of start over and make it more of a Texas kind of a landscape.
Not every plant is native, but Kathleen chose the ones that can take the heat.
If things don't survive 1 year, they're gone. You know, I just don't try to baby them at all.
She defined each area with structural standouts and diversified textures.
But the color was key too, because that silvery blue color, the agaves started that, and then the rosemary with the blooms on those, and then the Texas Silverado sage, and then the Arizona cypress along the backside too. It's all that blue-green color. I sort of get into, I like a certain kind of a color and effect, and I kind of go overboard with it and just keep using, but maybe that helps with the symmetry a little bit.
While some gardeners curse their rocks, Kathleen treasures each one.
Well, I was just amazed that they were, you know, here. And then, like in the back, when we wanted to do some landscaping and build the pool, they sort of uncovered natural rock shelves where the rocks were protruding out of the ground. And that was just like an epiphany. I thought, this is fabulous, these rocks. I've got to make sure every single one of them that I can show. So they actually designed the pool to run along the rock ledge so that we didn't interfere with the rock ledge. And then there's an arm of rocks right jutting into what would normally be plain lawn. But again, I had them cut around the rocks so that we can see the rocks. And they're so neat too, because all the little fossilized holes, and you know that this whole area was underwater, you know, millions or hundreds of thousands of years ago. So it's interesting to see those things and know that all of this at one time was completely underwater. And that's kind of fun to remind ourselves of too when you see those rocks.
Native stones frame raised beds for cascading lantanas that attract nectaring wildlife. Knockout roses aren't native, but they perform like ones, flowering for months.
But they're so easy care, and they give some nice color. And they don't need to be sprayed. That's another one of my rules. I really don't want to deal with pesticides and herbicides and all of that. If the bugs get it to the point where they die, then that's the end of them. Back in Minnesota, you had to do what they call the Minnesota tip method. You had to actually dig the roses half up, tip them over, and mound the dirt over them, or they wouldn't make it through the winter. And you planted the bud union a good 4 or 5 inches below the soil level. And of course here you don't have to do any of that.
One plant from our Minnesota days has worked just fine.
One thing I was surprised at, some things do make it here that were in Minnesota, like the mums. I can't believe how well these mums do here and survive in the heat and lack of water, and they're real troopers, and that's a shocker. With the aphids and so forth on, I think it's a salvia, the blue ones this year, they got the aphids really badly, and I was spraying them down with water a lot, and then I just kind of gave up and thought, let's see what happens. And they were fine, you know, they made it through the season, so it didn't kill the plant. So I've learned that too. Some things just cycle through and the plants are okay.
Beyond the kitchen doors, she designed a Spanish courtyard as a dining room with views to the back and front gardens. A pergola supports a young native crossvine that soon will cover it with almost evergreen shade. Here, Kathleen, Tom, and her mom, Pat, relax after the day's work is done. Fragrant elfin thyme thrives in the gritty, rocky spot. Raised beds frame their dining room with subtle privacy. In front, she designed raised beds again to reduce the Tiff Bermuda lawn with structural plants and friends for wildlife. Sadly, when she thought she was getting good soil, it turned out to be the dense red death type of sandy loam.
Now, when like an agave rots out because there's too much water, or I want to plant cactus, now what I'm going to do is plant it in decomposed granite or sand mixture. I'm going to do a little, when I replant things, I'm going to take that opportunity to dig down and expand the area a little bit and put better dirt in there for this specific plant that's going to live there.
Although she traded months of snow for months of brutal heat, Kathleen's already a confirmed Texan.
I like Texas, you know, and I think there's something that infuses, you know, the gardening and the architecture and all of it just sort of works together to be an environment for some reason that I just feel naturally attracted to. I just feel really at home here. And I like the plants, and I like the place, and I like the people.
All right, thanks so much for sharing your garden with us. And right now we're going to be talking about wonderful tales for children that will really get them involved with wildflowers and native plants. I'm joined by Cherie Colburn, who is an author, a blogger, and a speaker. And just a great gal, and we're really pleased to have you on Central Texas Gardeners.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you asking me to be here.
Well, we have a lot of fun things to talk about, including your latest book, which is Bloomin' Tales, which is really directed at children, but I think the adults in our audience would love it as well. But I wanted to learn a little bit more about how you got into gardening and what fascinates you about a lot of the folk tales associated with plants.
Well, I actually have a government and history undergraduate degree.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. My dad was a dentist. He just retired a few years ago in Athens, Texas. Okay. And he grew tomatoes. He grew up on a tomato farm in Jacksonville, tomato capital of the world.
Okay, I did not know that.
Then moved to Athens, the black-eyed pea capital of the world, so I couldn't help but go into horticulture at some point.
Right, okay.
So I grew up, I knew about plants. Mainly I knew what not to do, and that was from when I would weed the garden, and the oxalis ended up naturalizing because they look like weeds to me.
Yeah.
So I always was exposed to it. One of my grandmothers had a florist shop before I came along, but she had that love of gardening also. So I grew up in it.
Yeah.
So then after I got my degree, I ended up starting my family a little earlier than I'd planned. I was going to go to law school. And hormones kicked in and just kind of changed my life. So I stayed home.
Doing that, I guess.
Well, I don't hope you don't know about that. But, I ended up staying home with my girls for a few years and had a little business there. And then I went back to school in landscape design. And I've been a landscape designer for 21 years, but I also do learning gardens for schools. And that's really what got me into the legends about the wildflowers.
Well, they're a great pathway in, aren't they?
They really are.
Yeah.
They really are. And in doing the learning gardens for schoolyard habitat, I found that the kids had a hard time remembering those Latin names. And an even harder time sometimes with the common names, because one parent called it one thing and another parent called it something else. And so I started gathering all of these legends about the plants so they could remember the names of the flowers.
Well, we're storytelling and listening creatures. I mean, that's the best way to learn, obviously.
It's the way we're designed.
Yeah, generation after generation.
Absolutely.
For, I don't know, a million years, something like that. So let's talk about the book in particular, Bloomin' Tales. First off, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, lovely book to look at.
It is.
But it's organized around real legends or tales.
They are real legends or tales. I've discovered over 600 legends of plants in doing the learning gardens.
Wow.
They're from all over the world. Every culture tells stories about plants.
I wonder why that is. You know, could it be hundreds of thousands of years of agriculture?
Well, that, and I think that, you know, we think of flowers as pretty, but culturally, for most places, they're food, they're medicine, they're everything.
Sure.
They're part of their society, part of their religions, and so they have all those stories to go with them.
Right, right. So you have a wealth to choose from.
I do.
And you've plucked from the backyard, so to speak, for this particular book, really.
I have 7 of my favorites, and one of the criteria I had for it was, where did these grow? They need to grow just about everywhere.
Right.
I want the children to see them in the book and then recognize them when they're driving down the road and be able to tell their parents the story.
Right. I do want to mention that there are 2 editions of the book, one specifically for Texas, which is awesome.
That's correct.
Of course, we are a nation unto ourselves
Absolutely,
and
we
deserve
are.
special attention. And then there's one for the rest of North America, right?
There is. And all of these plants, now I do have this, what the story about the bluebonnet is the Texas bluebonnet specifically, but lupines grow everywhere.
Sure.
And it is in that family. So children will still recognize that flower.
Well, let's pull some particulars out. Let's tell a couple of these tales, or at least the outlines of these stories, so that give people a taste of some of these wonderful, wonderful legends.
Well, a couple of them are Native American because that's who was here first. They're the first Americans.
Right.
But I like also that I was able to pull in other cultures. So I have 5 other cultures that settled Texas and North America also.
Great.
One of those is the Scottish. And a lot of people have heard or seen or read the Tommy DiPaolo book about the bluebonnet. But you know, we have legends a lot of legends about the bluebonnet. And one of them is about a story of Scottish settlers in the Cameron, Texas area.
I'm completely unfamiliar with this, so I'm all ears.
There was a fire, a forest fire, and a family went to a stone structure of some sort, probably a fort, to escape the fire, and they were saved. And the legend is that to entertain the children that were there, who were obviously very afraid, the adults had them go to a blue jay nest and take those feathers and put them in their pocket. And as they left the fort with the blackened earth all around them, they planted those feathers, and those became the bluebonnet. And I really love that story because in Scottish tradition, the tam they call the bluebonnet. So it makes sense that that's how it got its name.
Okay, so there's lots of cultural connections here.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I named my character in that Thomas. We don't know what his name was. I named him Thomas after Thomas Drummond, who was with one of the original botanists in Texas.
Okay, okay. So this kind of magical intervention of children creates the bluebonnets. And I've heard lots of bluebonnet tales. I've never heard that particular one. Share another one. There's one that our producer Linda really wanted to talk about. Has Starry Dreams.
Starry Dreams is about Misha. And I actually found some of these legends I find 1 or 2 references to, and I've been doing this for 21 years. So I've been looking for them for a long time. And you know, J. Frank Dobie has several allusions to legends, plant legends. But this one specifically, I found in, I think, 12 different locations, very, very diverse places. And it's about a young man, a young Native American warrior who has a dream. And a star comes to him and wants to find a home. And he goes on a search with her to find a home. Eventually, she becomes, oh, is this a spoiler? Spoiler alert.
Okay, spoiler alert. That's okay. That's okay.
Eventually, she becomes the pond lily.
Oh.
And that's that white star that looks up back to her home every day.
Okay, that's wonderful. And I love the legends, you know, and it is a great memory device for the kids. And the best
for
way
adults.
and for teaching the kids too, which is, you know, the whole purpose really of the book is to entertain but also to instruct.
Well, and I'm really excited. My friend Barbara Emroth at University of Texas is asking the Austin School District to implement this as one of their added readings to the children in the 4th grade for history.
Well, I think that's wonderful. Yeah, well, those legends kind of do, I don't know, they kind of fill out the picture of our history in a lot of ways and put people in those shoes in a way that straight history maybe doesn't or can't. There's certainly a lot of joy and fun in the book, and I really like that aspect of it. Now, after reading the book, what are you hoping families will do with this material?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, Tom, I like the idea of a child being in the back seat, looking outside, seeing a wildflower, remembering the story, remembering the name, and being able to share that with other people. And I also feel like once you know someone and you become intimate with them, as they will with these flowers, then you take better care of them. They become part of your family, and you want to know what's going on with them.
Right.
And so I'm hoping that children will understand how integral these are to every part of our life.
Absolutely, that's beautiful. And one of the cool things about the book, too, which I just picked up for a moment and learned a couple of things that are going to stay with me. There are little fun facts at the end of the book that about different plant species, right? So you have the legends section, which are genuine stories, but then you also have lots of little cool facts that will help people, too.
I do, and I think in working with children, it is easy to get caught up in the stories and everything, and you lose them pretty quickly. But if you can tell them something that they can either gross their friends out with or surprise their friends, then they're going to remember that. And I mean, just for an example, goldenrod is one of the stories in the book, and Firestone tires. The first tires were made from latex from a goldenrod.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not very cost effective. So discount tires would not be carrying them.
Well, it's filled with fascinating facts, and the one that made me chuckle was that water lilies have a colloquial name of alligator bonnets.
That's right.
Which I found
I mean, can't you just see the alligator coming up with the lily on top of its head?
I absolutely love that. Well, Cherie, thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your book and your joyful imagination about all of this with us here on Central Texas Gardener.
Thank you, Tom.
It's been a real pleasure, and I wish you well with your project. And coming up next is our friend Daphne.
Hi, I'm Daphne Richards, and this is Auggie, CTG's doggy horticulturist. Our question this week is about fire ants and other insects in the compost pile. If you're an active composter, you'll definitely have insect larvae in your pile, and that's a good thing. These creatures are helping the microbes to break down the food waste in your pile and turn it into rich compost. Large off-white grubs are very commonly found in compost piles, and people often mistake them for the same grub that damages our lawns. But the grubs in your pile are from a different species of insect, not the June beetle larvae that eat the roots of your turf grass and other plants. You might also find black soldier fly larvae in your compost pile, which are also good. The insect species that are attracted to lay eggs in your pile will be influenced by what you put in it. If you have more kitchen scraps and food waste, you'll likely have more insect larvae. If you're only composting yard waste, you may not see as many creepy crawlies. But fire ants are another matter. Fire ants are actually building their mounds in the nice, soft, organic matter of your compost pile. Although they're doing some aeration and technically aren't hurting anything in the pile, you most likely still don't want them living there, since they'll see the pile as theirs, not yours. If you have a mound of fire ants in your pile, it indicates that you need to turn and moisten the pile more often. If you're regularly turning the pile, the ants will have no time to build a home. In the awful summer of 2011, I didn't turn my pile as much as I should have, and I came out one day to discover that a very large colony of fire ants had moved in. I got stung a few times when turning it, and it took a few turns to get the ants to move away, but they eventually did. So there's no need to use any chemical fire ant treatments in this situation. Our pick of the week is Caesalpinia. There are two very common species of Caesalpinia in the nursery trade, Pulcherima and Gillesii, and both are quite beautiful. Caesalpinia pulcherima is most commonly known as Pride of Barbados or red bird of paradise. It has orange-yellow flowers and is a little bushier than Caesalpinia Gillesii, which is most commonly known as yellow bird of paradise because it has all yellow flowers. Both plants love the heat, need full sun, and prefer very well-drained soil. These plants will bloom all summer long with very little supplemental irrigation, so be careful not to overwater them. Both plants may freeze to the ground in winter, but not always. The yellow bird of paradise in Kathleen's featured garden hasn't frozen to the ground in years, so she doesn't cut it back. Connie Lawson also sent pictures of hers that put on an amazing display all summer long. If you notice leaves re-emerging on the plant in the spring, the plant was not damaged by the cold and may be left alone. But as temperatures warm up, if you notice growth at the base of the plant from the roots and not from the branches, go ahead and prune off all the top growth and allow the plant to re-emerge from the roots. Pride of Barbados, the orange-flowered one, is more frost tender and does freeze to the ground in our winters more often than not. Both plants can get up to about 8 feet tall, but Pride of Barbados is generally a little shorter and bushier, mostly due to the fact that it freezes to the ground most years. And both plants get about 4 to 6 feet wide, so give them plenty of room. Both plants also attract hummingbirds, butterflies, and are considered to be deer resistant. Another pick of the week comes from Susan Brock, who found cardinals nesting in her knockout roses. Her diverse organic garden is a certified National Wildlife Federation backyard habitat where lots of wildlife make their home. Thanks for sharing this wonderful photo, Susan. To do this week, it's probably time to do a little garden cleanup. Those spring flowering plants have now gone to seed or have spent blooms, and removing them will help spruce up the garden and encourage a bit of rejuvenation. We'd love to hear from you, so please check out klru.org/CTG to send us your questions and plants of the week from your garden.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics.
Hello gardening friends, welcome to Backyard Basics. So a recent letter to Central Texas Gardener asked the question, how do I manage flies in my compost pile? And more than that, how do I control these maggots? And of course, it's easy to do. And so you bring food out every day, and that's what the flies are coming after. They're looking for those food scraps on a daily basis. But you can manage that. It's real easy, as a matter of fact. And it's the way you're supposed to make a compost pile. So what you're going to do is maybe you take some of the leaves from your landscape at home. There's plenty of them out there, especially in the fall. I like to make a big pile and then use them all season long until the next season comes around. So leaves are a wonderful thing to put on top of the food scraps. I have mine next to the pile, and what I'll do is just get out there and cover it. And it works very well, and the leaves break down, create a nice form of humus. That's how you do it. You can use other things, though. It's not just leaves. Here's some paper scraps, shredded paper. You'll find it in many places. There may be some at your office. And so you shred the paper up and or gather it from the shredder, take it home, and it serves the same purpose. Maybe you'll put paper in a trash can in case it rains, and it'll stay fresh and dry that way. And once again, you put the food scraps out there, you reach in there, you put the paper across the top. It's going to break down very nicely and feed the compost pile once again. So paper is an excellent thing. Some folks live in other areas of the state. We have many viewers all around the state, and for some of them, pine straw is available. So you can use the pine straw in the very same way. And in Central Texas, where the soil is very alkaline, the benefit of using the pine straw on top of the food is that it helps acidify the soil a little bit, and we need that. And so that's an important thing to use on your compost pile. So these are 3 things that you might have available easily. You can make your own too. If the farmers don't want the egg cartons, maybe there's an egg that broke in there and they can't use it again, I like to shred them up and use them in there. They're safe to use, they're not plastic, they're all natural, and so we'll just kind of cut up the pieces of paper and put them onto the top of the compost pile. Takes a few of these to do it, but it works. It's all about recycling. You know, another question that came in was about, where do I put my compost pile? Well, shade is nice. It's easy to work in the shade, but also it can work in the sun. What happens when it's out in the sun, though, is it tends to dry out very quickly, much too fast. And moisture is an essential part of a good compost pile. When I'm in the kitchen and I'm running out of juice maybe, and there's a little bit left over, mainly because it was just left over, like milk, soy milk, other types of juices. In order to rinse the container out before we put it in the recycle bin, we go ahead and rinse it. And then with that rinsate, we will go and put that into our little compost bucket. And we have one of these in the kitchen. You should have one in the kitchen too. And so we put the liquid in there because we need it for the compost pile. We need to moisten that thing. It won't work otherwise if it dries out. That's the benefit of putting it in the shade. It dries out very, very slowly. And then you alternate. You can put some coffee grounds in there. The food scraps that we're taking out to the compost pile all go in there. And on a daily basis, we'll take our little bucket out there, empty it into the compost, and once again, you're going to cover it with one of these, and you may have something else around your home that you might use also. Hair from the pets, material that comes out of the vacuum cleaner. All of those things go into the compost pile. We're recycling as good as we can when we take the kitchen scraps and other things that can be broken down and put them all into our compost container, especially liquids. Since we need them out there every day, it's going to be the best thing that you've ever done for your compost pile. For Backyard Basics, I'm John Dromgoole. I'll see you next time.
Check out klru.org/CTG for lots more and to watch online. Next week, get fire-wise tips to protect your home. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online and follow CTG's blog. Check out klru.org/CTG.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.